All right, so today is Saturday morning, February 29th. It's leap year. I actually filmed a video last night before I left the shop, and when I got home to kind of review it and post it, that video sucked. So I came back this morning to refilm and kind of attempt it again. So anyway, it's kind of been a little bit tumultuous trying to figure out what's going on. I kind of originally thought, hey, sell this build, avoid, dealing with transporting it up to Idaho, get another kit. It seemed on paper really simple and easy to do. But it kind of started to prove difficult. Kit availability is not very good. The factory in South Africa is slammed and kind of behind schedule making new kits. And most everybody who is interested in purchasing this project just wanted to truck it up to Torrance because it's so close and have the build assist there finish it. Unfortunately, Torrance's build assist program has several TSIs in the works and, it's more scheduled in the near future here. So they are booked solid and unable to accommodate that. And so in my search to see if there's any other kits available, I did come across another kit for sale in Oregon. He's got the extended range fuel tanks for his kits. He's got basically everything except for the canopy and, of course, no motor and propeller and avionics and everything like that. He's got a good chunk of work done on the fuselage, and it looks like he's been doing great work. It's not his first build. I actually had a plane ticket booked to go up and take a look at it when I thought that this thing was pretty much sold. Oops. And then I found out that Torrance wasn't going to be able to finish the build, and so it's kind of cost prohibitive to ship it off to some of the other build assists. It gets pricey in transportation. So that being said, I am going to complete this build. I'm going to take it up to Idaho with me. I actually found out that you can rent a 54-foot semi-truck trailer. I thought the longest was a 40-foot, and that wasn't quite going to fit everything, but 54 feet will fit all of my shop equipment, the plane, and everything, and it's going to be good to go. So I'm actually excited I can finish this build. And like I said, that other build that I was interested in, I don't know if he's got a whole lot of traction selling it, kind of just posting randomly online. So I'll leave a link in the description for it. I think it's a pretty good deal for somebody who's interested in getting into building a TSI sooner, as well as for a much lower cost than this one was going to go for, just because he's got a lot less done and he doesn't have the motor and all the other expensive parts like avionics and stuff. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description for that if anybody's interested. But other than that, I'll show you what work I've gotten done this week. So I had this top front skin on the plane clecoed in last week, and kind of one of the big aspects of this project is you need to plan a couple steps ahead. So in order to fit this front cowling and get it trimmed up to the exact right spot, you have to have this front skin riveted on. But in order to rivet that front skin on, you have to have everything, or you should have everything that goes here behind this avionics sub panel to the firewall all finished up, because you're not going to be able to get to it anymore unless you crawl underneath and work from underneath, but that's no fun. So I don't know if you noticed on the video last week, I got the cowling kind of fitted together. You just set it on the ground and line everything up. You kind of have to trim the edges just to get a nice clean fit, and then you just drill 4 holes and cleco it together, and then this is pretty much how it's going to sit until it's time to fit it on there and trim it. One thing that is important to note is the instructions show to drill this hole, I forgot, like 55 millimeters down from the top, and they give you kind of the dimensions for this first hole. And then they say to drill 4 holes spaced 28 millimeters apart. So I marked it out there, and then I realized, well, that's all it says to do. So kind of took a step back before I drilled them and realized the manual actually means 28 centimeters apart. And then 28 centimeters apart gives you perfect 4 spacing for those holes. So don't, and I confirmed it with pictures of completed TSIs on the internet. There's definitely not just 4 holes here, and that's the whole cowling. So, and then once you take your spacing, it actually lands you in kind of no man's land for this particular one. If you were to put it, you know, somewhere here where the 28 millimeters is, there's a bunch of obstruction on the back side because of this ducting. So you kind of have to use some kind of common sense and double check everything on the back side and the front before you drill those holes. So just so you don't run into any problems with installing those fasteners on the back side later on. So anyway, yeah, this guy is pretty much going to sit like this until it's time to put it on there and trim it. And so the work I was doing back here to fill in everything in order to rivet that front top skin on. So I got all the ducting put in for the heater and the air. I switched out, it came with zip ties, and I switched those out for hose clamps because this is kind of like a rigid aluminum tubing, and the zip ties aren't able to you know, get a good squeeze through this onto the underlying part. So maybe it's okay on these aluminum pieces, but underneath here where it connects to the heater, those plastic tubes are actually kind of fairly significantly smaller in diameter than the tube. So it does take a good crush on this aluminum tubing in order to really clamp it on. And then I'm not really sure, the manual doesn't say it, but I'm not sure if people usually use like a silicone or maybe some of the Sikaflex to seal underneath these connections. I haven't done it yet because I'm not sure if this is going to be the final placement. For example, I'm pretty sure I might shorten this tube, bring this fitting in, and then it'll straighten this duct and it'll just get this fitting kind of further out of the way. Same thing on this side. See, I don't think it needs to stick out 6 inches off the wall there. So yeah, that's kind of what I would do. Also, this little valve, whatever it is supposed to mount straight just to the skin with 2 rivets right there. What I did, because the skin is pretty flimsy, and I'm not sure if this is necessary or not, but I just took a piece of thin aluminum bar stock and put it behind the skin there as kind of like a reinforcement, to kind of like a backing plate, just to strengthen the skin where this guy is. And it took a lot of there's still a little bit of wobble, but it took a lot of it out. It was pretty flimsy just mounted to the skin like that. So yeah, so that's what I did there. So another thing I started doing, before I get to that, one of the last things from, you know, in this area here that I'm trying to finish off is the heater. This little black line here goes to the lever, focus, back there. That lever controls whether or not the heat comes out. So it's this Bowden tube here, and it just operates like that. So it pulls this wire through this tube sleeve and actuates that lever back there. You do need to trim this. It comes pretty long, and so you need to kind of measure out where your panel is going to be and trim it to fit accordingly, because otherwise, I tested it before I trimmed it, it kind of loops around like that, which looks fine as far as, you know, fitting, but there ends up being a lot of resistance in that tube, and that knob is really hard to twist. So trimming it down and getting it to be kind of a straight shot is pretty important, I think. So yeah, anyway, that went together pretty easily. And so then I started doing, before that, the ECU is another thing back here. I was reading the Rotax manual, and it says that these 3 connection points on the bottom of it only have 20 connects and disconnects lifespan, I guess, before the connectors are no good anymore. So you want to avoid connecting the ECU until you think it's pretty much the final mount. It says to log every time you connect and disconnect those connectors into the ECU, into the engine's logbook. So I think it's fairly important to keep track of that. So that's why I'm leaving them disconnected until I think that it's about time to just button everything up in here. So yeah, then while my wiring harness is being made, I started doing kind of this extra rib here for the Avionics remote mount stuff. A lot of people, I was originally kind of drawing it out on here. I've seen the factory, I think, usually uses this rib to mount everything, but I've seen these being done lately, and I think it's a much cleaner solution. Basically, you just span from this rib to that rib and kind of rivet it in once it's all in place, but this isn't riveted yet as I'm test fitting. And so, let's see if I can get it out while I'm filming. So, what it is just some aluminum angles and some aluminum sheet metal, and you just kind of cut it to size. I used, some aluminum channel pieces here to raise the components, or I guess lower them far enough so that the connectors are clear of the channel here. And then down the line, when there's a bunch of wires, I'll be able to drill holes along this channel to kind of have like clips to hold the wires down in place. One thing that I did do on here, and I'm not sure if it's gonna be okay or not, is I shared one rib for the mounting point for both this. This is the GEA24, it's the engine analyzer module, and this is the GAD29, it's the air data for the GPS to be whatever it does, interpreted it and puts it into readable format for the G3X, I think. So I'm not really sure if I'm allowed to share a rib with these two. I know that they're allowed to be close, but I'll have to look into it a little bit more detail, whether or not that's going to be a good permanent solution or not. And if it's not really that big of a deal to just add a second rib here and then move this one over, just to move the box over, whatever, half an inch or whatever it is. So yeah, this is just kind of a mock-up one. I'm not sure if it'll be the permanent one or not. This material is really cheap to work with, so I just started throwing it together really quickly. And then the next couple steps will be to mount the VPX. It'll go kind of right here, and then with some extra, channels and mounting plates, it'll go here, and then above that will go the intercom system. And on the other side, I'll have the 2 remote comm radios. You want to try to leave the center space here clear, because the GPS sticks off the panel like a full foot behind the panel. It's a really deep unit, so trying to leave this space clear from anything in the future, or anything on the rib there. Another thing I got done this week was I finally got these, man, my camera's not focusing. I got these latch systems figured out. So I've been kind of wrestling with it. Once I got that obstruction in here cleared out, it was still kind of a pain to get that 10mm rod to fit and bend perfectly and come out and line up as it's supposed to on both sides. So what I did is I got a 1/4-inch rod from Home Depot and ground off the flat side there so it can mate up to the latch nicely. And this is just a like a mock-up, because I've got to take all of this back off in order to paint it. So don't mind the fact that there's meshing washers and a stack of washers here because this bolt's too long. All of that will be fixed for the final assembly. But yeah, so I used a M3 button head screw and just drilled a hole in this rod. And actually, when you use this 1/4 inch rod, it goes through perfectly straight. You don't even have to bend it. I did put a tiny bend, maybe like 2 or 3 degrees right about here in the rod, just so it kind of brings it up to mate nice and smooth and flush to this latch here. So yeah, and then this back hook here needs an M5 riv nut that it says in the manual is pre-installed. It's not. They've changed that process for whatever reason to be, user installed. So all you have to do is kind of mount your front latch, because this is more, there's no guesswork where this goes. There's a hole here, and you just kind of fit it together, and you just kind of look at the range of motion. So latched, not latched, and you just get the back to match, latched, not latched. And when you kind of find where that good pivot point should be, you drill a hole and mount the riv nut. So no big deal. But yeah, I think that, so when I decided to go to Home Depot and switch out for this, it took me maybe 30 minutes per door. Whereas when I was wrestling with those 10mm rods, it took me like a day and a half, and I still didn't get them right. So I think that these are, plenty strong. I don't see any reason why it should yield in any way. There's a decent, maybe a decent amount of pressure when you're going to latch the door shut, but I mean, this is 1/4 inch aluminum rod and it's perfectly straight. There's no reason why it shouldn't be able to hold up to that. Another thing that I noticed when I was building is the keys for the doors are different. So they're slightly different, but they're definitely different, and they do not unlock each other. So as of right now, I'm gonna have to find out how to rekey one of these doors, because I've now got a key for this door, a key for this door, a different key for the baggage compartment, and a different key for both gas tanks. So, and then I guess when the plane is done, I'll have a key for the ignition. So that's too many keys for one plane. So I'm gonna have to look into how to rekey this stuff. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of, I honestly believe that this rod is gonna be the better solution. So, and I've talked to other builders who are struggling with getting this rod to bend properly, and I can't even describe how much easier this was. It was like 30 minutes per door. So yeah, the other thing is, if anybody knows, if using a common mount point for these two boxes is unacceptable, go ahead and let me know. Other than that, I'm gonna have to kind of look it through in the manual. I doubt it's a problem. One other thing that was brought to my attention, and it is very important, is I mentioned in a video a couple weeks ago about building the wings, drilling out the spar holes. So when I did that, the process that they do for these spars is when they kind of sandwich all the plates, because see, there are several layers of plates. When they sandwich those together, they then, in the factory, clear drill each one. Mine did not come clear drilled. So the bolts were not gonna go through. If you do have to do this process, it's very important to clamp the spar together so that nothing can kind of get in between the layers, and use a reamer, not a drill bit. So I say drill no matter what I'm doing. I know it's not right, but I was reaming them. So it's important to have the bolt in double shear, so when it goes in the hole, it's not supposed to have any movement at all. And see, I can't even push it through. And so that's how it's supposed to be. And then, you're supposed to maybe freeze the bolt to shrink it just slightly and push it through, or use the threads to kind of pull it through when you're tightening it. But it's very important that those are a tight fit. If the bolt just drops through, you've pretty much ruined your wing spar, because that dynamic load of any kind of turbulence bouncing back and forth will eventually wear the holes through, and that would be a bad day. So yeah, I did want to clarify that. This is a very important step. These bolts need to be a really tight fit through these holes. If it does come that way, probably contact the factory for exact directions on how to proceed. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Don't just drill them out so that it falls through. Make sure it's in double shear and nice and tight fit. So yeah, I think that's the progress for this week. And have a good weekend. I'll be back next week.